The Deputy First Minister was interviewed last week about Michael Matheson's dishonesty. She was asked if SNP ministers always tell the truth. She was given multiple opportunities to answer with a simple yes, but she didn't. So let me give her another opportunity today. Do Scottish Government ministers always tell the truth?
Deputy First Minister.
Presiding Officer, before I answer the member's question, can I begin by paying tribute to the late Lord James Douglas Hamilton. Lord James had a long and distinguished career as a public servant in 3 parliamentary chambers, including, of course, this one. Those of us who served alongside him here remember a kind, funny and warm gentleman who embodied the spirit of cross-party friendship and collaboration, which is part of the ethos of this Parliament and has served us well. On behalf of the Scottish Government, I offer my condolences to Lord James' family and to his friends. In terms of Douglas Ross's question, of course, it's for Douglas Ross to decide on his questions, but it is very telling that for weeks now he's had nothing to say on the Tory autumn statement that has been devastating for Scotland's public services, nothing on the cost of living crisis, nothing to say on Grangemouth, nothing to say on the climate emergency as leaders gather to discuss the biggest challenge of our age. Of course, these are Tory priorities. But can I answer about his question about what I said? Of course, ministers should tell the truth. What I was referring to was the fact that sometimes people get things wrong. Sometimes people make mistakes, including, of course, Douglas Ross himself, who made a mistake worth around £28,000 when he was late with his outside earnings. Of course, ministers should always tell the truth.
Douglas Ross.
Well, can I begin on an area where we will agree? Lord James Douglas Hamilton was a true gentleman and a friend to everyone he worked with, not just in Holyrood and at Westminster as a minister, an MP and a member of the House of Lords, but also as a local councillor where he started his career in public service. And I think the tributes we have seen across the political spectrum have helped his wife Susie and their children and the wider family at this difficult time, and they are all in our thoughts today. But that was quite a telling answer. First of all, the Deputy First Minister was basically saying there are more important issues than a government minister claiming £11,000 of taxpayers' money and thinking he could get away with it. That's why this issue is important. And the simple question was, do Scottish Government ministers always tell the truth? We still haven't had a yes or no answer. We've had a conditional answer that they would try to, but sometimes they make mistakes. But that is not what is at heart here. It's what Michael Matheson claimed for. It's about what he said, what he did, and then the cover-up. Because it's quite clear now that this SNP government defends dishonesty. Michael Matheson claimed taxpayers' money when he shouldn't have. He changed his story. He made up ludicrous excuses. So let me ask the Deputy First Minister this. Does she seriously believe that Michael Matheson has been 100% honest throughout this scandal?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, Michael Matheson has, of course, reimbursed the Parliament in full for the costs incurred. And, of course, Michael Matheson also set out his position in his personal statement in detail. And, of course, he has also referred himself to the Scottish Parliament corporate body. He has also recognised, importantly, that he should have handled the situation better, and he's accepted responsibility and he's rightly apologised in full. The appropriate thing now, of course, is to allow the Scottish Parliament corporate body to look into this matter, and I'm sure that is something they will do with a pace that is required.
Dr. Ross.
Well, of course Michael Matheson could have handled the situation better. He could have told the truth. He could have been honest. And we can't park this issue to the Scottish Parliament investigation because they are looking at the claim made for taxpayers to pay £11,000 of a bill. They're not looking at the statements made which now seem to have been dishonest from Michael Matheson. Let's remember, He's the MSP that once bragged about watching 6 football matches in a single weekend. But now he wants us to believe that when he was on holiday, he never watched the games, he never knew the football was on, and he never spoke to anyone about it. And when a giant bill came in, he was completely clueless about it. So can I ask the Deputy First Minister, does she seriously expect the public to believe a word of this story?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, as I've said, Michael Matheson has set out the circumstances and the way in which he handled it in the course of his personal statement. And as for the matters that the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body will look into, that is a matter for them. They obviously can refer the matter elsewhere if they feel that would be the appropriate thing to do. Michael Matheson has given a full account to this Parliament, and he also opened himself up to questions from members of this Parliament. As he has accepted he should have handled the situation better, he's accepted responsibility and he's rightly apologised for that. And I think the appropriate thing now is to allow the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body to look into this. The reason I said what I said at the beginning about Douglas Ross's priorities is that Douglas Ross has had nothing to say about an autumn statement given by the Tory Chancellor that has given no money whatsoever for public services for this government, for this country, for our public services for next year. I actually think the public are pretty concerned about that, because that will impact on every part of the public sector across Scotland. If the Tories don't care about that, the SNP certainly does care about that.
Deputy First Minister Douglas Ross.
Well, of course, I have spoken about the autumn statement, the £545 million extra money coming to the Scottish Government to spend on public services. But the public are also speaking about this, about how one of the most senior members of the SNP government, one of the highest paid ministers in Scotland, tried to claim £11,000 of taxpayers' money for his iPad bill. But the problem for the SNP government is the public don't believe Michael Matheson. A poll yesterday showed the vast majority of Scots believe he should stand down, and that included a majority of SNP voters who believe Michael Matheson needs to go. Now, they can see he's not focused on the day job. In the middle of an NHS crisis, the public need to trust the Health Secretary. They don't. Nurses and doctors, when they meet him, need to know that he's honest. He's not. The Health Secretary has lost the confidence of the country, and he needs to go for the good of our NHS. This week, the Deputy First Minister said the public sector workforce would need to shrink. Shouldn't that start with sacking Michael Matheson?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, of course, what Douglas Ross didn't refer to in the poll was that 72% were dissatisfied with Rishi Sunak's performance as the Prime Minister, and, of course, 54% of people support independence for Scotland. In terms of Michael Matheson getting on with the job, Michael Matheson is getting on with the job of being Health Secretary, ahead of what, of course, is expected to be a challenging winter for the Health Service. If Douglas Ross cared anything about the NHS, he would be objecting to the fact that next year only £10.8 million has been given to the NHS from the UK Tory government. Less than £11 million. I think actions speak louder than words. I don't think Douglas Ross and the Tories care about the NHS if they're prepared to support the Tory government on that matter. In terms of what the Health Secretary has been doing this week, he has announced £42 million of funding for an extra 153 doctor training places next year, the largest annual expansion on record. And, of course, he met with the Royal College of Nursing to discuss our agenda for change and to hear about the issues facing nurses. And on that point, of course, there's no money for Agenda for Change pay from this Tory government for next year, which is an absolute outrage.
Thank you, Deputy First Minister. Question number 2, Anna Surber.